back here for day 2 of the Sideline Guys Super Bowl Special, Super Bowl 47 preview. Adam Schindler, Charlie Crable, Paul Antonelli, and Michael Kelly here with you at RecorderNews.com. Yesterday, in the same clothes we're wearing right now, so gives you a little peek behind the scenes. But yesterday we talked about the Baltimore Ravens. Today to the NFC, the San Francisco 49ers, their first Super Bowl appearance since 1995. The 49ers champions in the NFC, and when we talk about the 49ers on offense, it's all about the midseason switch from Alex Smith to Colin Kaepernick and the revolutionization of the San Francisco offense.
Well, I mean, the San Francisco's offense starts and stops with Colin Kaepernick. I mean, in the 7 regular season games since he took over this 49ers offense, I mean, he's thrown for 1,814 yards, 10 touchdowns, only 3 picks. He's run for over 400, 5 touchdowns on the ground. This guy has provided a spark that the 49ers has sorely needed all year. It's not anything against Alex Smith. The 49ers were already a really good team with Alex Smith at quarterback, but since Colin Kaepernick has come in, he's just added an entire new dimension to that 49ers offense.
And what he does so well is the fact that he can win 2 different ways. He can win throwing the football as well as passing the football. I'm sorry, passing and running the football. And he did that for both games in the playoffs.
I think the thing, too, matchup-wise, that's interesting is that the Ravens come into this game playing 3 very good, come into this game having played 3 very good quarterbacks, but played 3 traditional pocket passers in Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Andrew Luck. They've had 2 weeks to prepare for this, but this is a completely different animal, just in terms of what they have to deal with, like Paul was saying. I think how they deal with that kind of a rapid change after, maybe being able to get used to playing a certain style, that'll be very interesting to watch in the first 5-6 minutes.
Yeah, this pistol read option look that San Francisco's been using. Colin Kaepernick came out of college from the school that basically invented it at Nevada. Ran this brilliantly in college and has been just terrific. He's got such a strong arm, and what's been so good about Kaepernick is when they use that little zone read play, he really does have 3 options every time. He can give it to Frank Gore, who's been tremendous in the playoffs. He can run it himself, and he ran for 181 yards in the divisional round game against Green Bay. But what he can do that makes it so hard, he can pull it back, take 1 step, and just look down the seam to a guy like Vernon Davis or outside to Michael Crabtree or Randy Moss. It's a vertical offense with a running game, and when you look at the San Francisco running game, a tremendous offensive line, and a really, really great and underrated running back in Frank Gore.
Well, I mean, and he's the aptly named Frank Gore because that guy's like a bull when he comes out of the backfield. I mean, you're talking about a 1,200-yard back in the regular season, 8 touchdowns. He's barely the leading running back for the 49ers in the postseason right here, but 206 yards in 2 games, 3 touchdowns. He just runs right over you. He forces defenses to play a lot of their safeties up because you got to stop that running game. Which winds up opening, up the passing game quite a bit for Kaepernick to play that vertical style offense that he loves to play.
And you're talking about that offensive line is probably the best offensive line in football, especially on the left side where you have two Pro Bowlers, and the right side of the line isn't that bad as well. And then when you have a physical runner like Gore, that can mean a long day for the Baltimore defense.
Right, and we talk about Kaepernick being the difference maker, but when you look at the 49ers season, Frank Gore, 4.9 yards per carry in wins. In losses, 3.7. Kaepernick gives them a much different option at quarterback than Smith did, but they really still do go as Gore goes.
That's absolutely right, and Paul mentioned the offensive line. That left side of the offensive line, the entire offensive line is just nasty for the 49ers, but the left tackle, Joe Staley, the left guard, Mike Iupati, who in just a couple of years in the NFL has become maybe the best guard in the league, and if he's not, might be on the Ravens, and Marshall Yanda. But those guys are a physical run-blocking line, but when you look at the San Francisco passing game, you've got a big-time receiver in Michael Crabtree. You've got a legend in Randy Moss, who this week called himself the greatest wide receiver in the history of the game of football. Then you've really got 2 tight ends, because not only do you have Vernon Davis, but they have their kind of blocking tight end in Delaney Walker, who's also been a bit of a passing option.
He has been, but I mean, if you look at, the stuff that Crabtree and Davis have done in this postseason, their stat lines are just disgusting. In 2 games for Crabtree, he's had 15 catches for 176 yards and 2 touchdowns. Vernon Davis, 6 catches only, but it's been for 150 yards and a touchdown, which is just that's an insane stat line for a tight end. Those two guys have been good. You mentioned Moss a little bit. It's been interesting to see him emerge in this playoffs against, he's had 5 catches for 71 yards, but he brings an experience factor to a very relatively young and inexperienced receiving core.
Yeah, and really, I mean, the key is, Kaepernick is inexperienced, and, we're talking about the Super Bowl stage, and, he's only played essentially a half a season, and it's going to be interesting to see, especially early on, how he handles that pressure.
And yesterday we did mention those safeties for the Ravens, but Ed Reed, a traditional undersized defensive back, Bernard Pollard's a physical guy, maybe not quite the physical specimen though that many safeties are. Randy Moss against those two guys, if they give Randy Moss a go route, I think that could be a place where the 49ers can get 1 or 2 game-changing plays.
Yeah, those Baltimore corners and the safeties have a big job, not just with Moss, A.J. Jenkins, Crabtree down the side, but Vernon Davis down the seam. If they can get a matchup between Vernon Davis and Bernard Pollard, that really, really favors the 49ers, because if you want to talk about Bernard Pollard not being a physical specimen, there may be no better physical specimen in the NFL than Vernon Davis. Let's switch it over to the other side of the ball. The 49er defense maybe be the best replication of the early 2000s Baltimore defense, and it starts with an incredible front seven, a terrific defensive line, starters Justin Smith, Isaac Sopuaga, Ray McDonald, but the linebackers, the 4 linebackers, Ahmad Brooks and Alden Smith on the outside, and then Patrick Willis is the best middle linebacker in football, and Navarro Bowman's not far behind.
He is, and you mentioned Alden Smith, and I mean, this guy was an absolute monster in the regular season, 19.5 sacks leading the team. However, if I'm the 49ers and I'm looking at his performance in the postseason so far, I'd probably be a little concerned. I mean, he's only got 3 tackles in 2 games, no sacks. He does have a forced fumble and a fumble recovery, but I mean, the lack of production that he has not been, a sign that the entire defense is folding or anything like that. But, I mean, no rushers over 60 in the playoffs. Ravens are going to have a very tough time moving the ball against this
Right,
defense.
and, you talk about Willis and Bowman are probably 2 of the top 5 linebackers in football today. And, we hear a lot about what the Ravens have in Lewis and in Suggs, but the 49ers clearly have the edge in the linebacking position.
We've done a really good job of not overdoing this too much. I believe the hard bowl, though, is when the Niners defense is going against the Ravens offense. I think that is where each coach has the most chips to move around. And in that matchup, I favor Jim, who I believe is the coach of the 49ers. I mix them up all the time. I think the things that they can do against that Ravens offense, which relies on those big plays, but also those short runs, I'm interested to see what kind of blitz packages they come up with and the different things that they're going to do to move around all those linebackers.
Oh, yeah. Vic Fangio, the 49ers defensive coordinator, against Jim Caldwell, the Ravens offensive coordinator, is an interesting matchup. If you look at maybe one weakness of this 49ers defense that was shown in the NFC Championship game against Atlanta, it's the big pass plays, especially early. Down the middle to Tony Gonzalez and over the top to Julio Jones. So that's what Baltimore wants to do. So that could be the interesting thing if Baltimore tries, go with their bread and butter, get downfield, get Jacoby Jones and Torrey Smith against not a great San Francisco secondary, especially the safeties.
Well, I mean, and they gave up 257 pass yards to Aaron Rodgers when they played Green Bay, 396 against Matt Ryan. You could clearly, if those quarterbacks, I mean, these are 2 very good quarterbacks that we're talking about, so I guess those numbers aren't all that surprising. But at the same time, if I'm, the 49ers secondary, I'm concerned because you can throw on that secondary if those quarterbacks.
Right, and Carlos Rogers is a decent cover guy, but, the 49ers have to have a pass rush to take the pressure off of the 49ers secondary.
Right, I think the thing that favors the Niners in this game is they have struggled a little bit this year when they're playing on turf. I think that added quickness takes away from that physicality of their defense. At the same time, though, they had practice with that in their most recent game. They were able to figure out the Falcons kind of in that second half. I think this defense is going to turn in a great performance.
Yeah, adjustments are going to be huge. If they get hit early like they did against Atlanta, can they adapt? They certainly did against the Falcons. That's part 2 down. Tomorrow we finally get you into our predictions and get you completely set for Super Bowl 47 tomorrow. Predictions, MVPs, and more. We'll be back tomorrow with that.